Hi, welcome to Not Atypical Real Estate Marketing Show, the show where we explore all things creative in an effort to move the real estate marketing industry forward. So my name is Mark.
And I'm Skye.
And we are the founders of Atypical.
Let's dive straight into today's topic, Google Analytics. So I'm sure all of you or most of you are using Google Analytics in one way or another to measure your website traffic and user data. But in today's episode, we wanted to dig a little bit deeper into some of the aspects of Google Analytics that you may not know about or that you may not be using to their full potential. Data is wonderful, but if you don't understand kind of what you're looking at or how to interpret that to make an actionable insight, then it's pretty useless. So what we're hoping that you get out of today's episode is how to really measure the effectiveness of your website data and your user behavior. But before we dig in, we are going to dig into this. Today's feature product from South Africa, it's a dessert. It's called Malva pudding. For those of you who don't know me, I don't cook at all. In fact, I'm pretty hopeless in the kitchen, but I can cook about five things really well, and Malva pudding is one of them. So
we should have told what you were pouring on here. Sorry, this is custard, Ultramalt custard. Do you get this?
I don't know.
Get this.
I'm not sure if you get Ultramalt in the States. So if you don't get custard, Malva pudding is best served hot, and then you serve it with ice cream or cream, or in this case, custard.
Custard is delicious with hot Malva. So Malva is a really traditional South African dessert. It's like major primary ingredient is apricot jam, and it's got like a really spongy texture, but the top is almost like caramelized. So you've got this like sweet caramel top with like this spongy bottom with the ice cream or custard to sort of soak it all up. It's really delicious, and we eat a lot of it.
It's incredibly unhealthy, but it's delicious.
We don't eat a lot of it.
No, we don't eat a lot of it. It's very unhealthy, but it's really good. And it's a South African staple. The name Malva pudding, according to the Oxford English Dictionary, actually comes from the Afrikaans word Malva lekker, which means marshmallow. I have no idea why. There's no marshmallows in this, but I think it's got like a sponge cake texture. So maybe that's where the marshmallow comes from. But if you're not sold already, Oprah Winfrey's chef once served this as a dessert at her Christmas dinner. So, it's obviously pretty good. And in the description for the video, I have included a download to my personal recipe, which is kind of a big deal that I'm sharing that with you. So if you do have the inspiration to create your own or make your own Malva, please do give it a go and then send us some photos. I would love to see how it turns out. It's good.
Cheers, Oprah. Oh, that's very good. Sweet, but good. Delicious. Thank you, Skye, for making that.
It's a pleasure.
Okay, let's get started. So before we actually jump into the sort of data side of Google Analytics, we wanted to just take a step back and actually look at or sort of question, why are we actually doing this? So why are you pulling the marketing reports that you're pulling? Why are you looking at the metrics that you're looking? Do you actually understand the sort of data that you're looking at and how that relates to your business or helping you achieve specific business goals? So the first thing that we actually recommend you do before you start looking at the Google Analytics environment is actually defining your business objectives, your business goals that you're actually trying to achieve. So this probably will involve more stakeholders than just the marketing team. It'll probably involve most of the sort of business in defining these business objectives. And these are not marketing objectives. So it's not growing your social media following or getting more visitors to your website. That's great from a marketing point of view. But what we're interested in initially is defining what are you trying to achieve from a business point of view. So once you have that defined, you can then reverse that back to better understand the behavior or the actions on your website that are going to drive that specific action being sort of met. So defining those those metrics that you're looking to track, and that's actually what you should be tracking and reporting on from a sort of marketing report point of view. So it's important to spend the time and actually define those objectives, get back to that specific metric that you should be tracking before you dive into the details of analytics. So I think just one more thing on that point. I think taking this approach of getting business involved and tying back your reports and your metrics to specific business objectives means that you do get all of the stakeholders sort of bought into the process and excited about the process. So when you're going through these marketing reports with everyone, they actually can connect the dots between, organic sessions and how that actually might result in a business goal of decreasing vacancy rates, for example, and sort of connect those dots. So it's definitely worth spending the time to do that.
Cool, but I think before we get into anything more practical, something that we've noticed with Google Analytics and some of our clients is an incorrect setup of the platform. So we're kind of going to walk you through the 5 most common setup issues or mistakes and how you would rectify them. So the first thing is views. So at a high level, think of your views as the lens that you're looking at your data through. So when you're setting up your Google Analytics, you want to set up 3 main views. So you've got your master view, your test data view, and your raw data view. So your master view is your everyday view. That's what you've got all your filters and modifications applied to, and that's what you'll use on an everyday basis to report on. Then you've got your test view. So this is essentially, it's pretty self-explanatory, but this is essentially your testing environment. So this is where you'll test all of your filters and modifications before you apply them to your master view. So it's best practice that you set up your test view first, create all your filters, make sure that they're firing off correctly and that they're doing what you want them to do, and then you import those to your master view. And then finally, you've got your raw data view. So this remains untouched. You don't apply any filters or modifications to this view, and it's essentially your backup. If anything goes wrong with either your test or master data view, you've got your sort of raw data to begin with. Cool, so number 2 is filters. So again, just quickly tracking back to views. Once you've created a filter and kind of implemented it, you can't undo the way that filter has been applied to your data. So once it's been applied to your data, that's it. So again, it's super important that you test it first in your testing view and then export it to your master view. So you can apply as many different filters as you want, but at a bare minimum, these are some of the ones that we think you should definitely be focusing on or applying first. So the first one is to exclude all internal and vendor or supplier traffic. So this means that you would just exclude the IP address of your staff or any vendors or suppliers who will frequent your website. Then you want to exclude all referral spam. And then the last one is to apply the lowercase search term. So this will make all your search terms lowercase, and it basically just helps consolidate your data and keep it quite neat. And that also, just a general point to make, when you are setting up your Google Analytics, it's very important to adopt a consistent naming convention across the platform. Again, this keeps things looking neat, and if you have multiple users using your data to report on, it helps everybody understand exactly what's going on. So number 3 is your subdomain and cross-domain tracking. So this is one of the most common problems that we've encountered, particularly with property websites. So if your website has a lot of different sub or cross domains, for example, your properties are listed on a platform like Property Capsule, you want to be able to measure your audience members clicking from your website to those property pages in one single session. And in order to do this, you need to make sure that you've set up your sub and cross domains correctly. So in order to set this up correctly, you need to follow 2 steps. The first one is to set your cookie domain, and the second one is to update your referral exclusion list. So we have included a link in the description below that will walk you through this 2-step process. It's quite basic and easy to do, and we highly recommend that you do this.
Yeah. So anybody, just to clarify the sort of subdomain thing, if you're not 100% sure what that is. So your website is www.yourwebsite.com, for example, and then a subdomain is when you're replacing the www portion of that with property or investor or something else .yourwebsite.com. So by default, what will happen is if somebody's going from your website to that subdomain, that session that they've got on your website will get lost when they go to that subdomain, and it'll start tracking it as a new session. So your things like session duration and pages per session and all of those sorts of metrics will get sort of fragmented, and that data won't be accurate. So it's an important thing to get right. Yeah.
Cool. So number 4 is your UTM parameters. So this is particularly important if you're running a campaign, and it's essentially adding tracking parameters to the end of your campaign link, which will allow you to see where your users are coming from. So it's your referral traffic essentially. It's incredibly important to help you measure the ROI of any campaign that you're running, and it's such an easy thing to do. And yeah, I mean, it's our like go-to. We always make sure that our clients have tracking parameters on all of their links. And Google Analytics actually has a little like UTM campaign builder that you can very easily put your information in. We'll include a link for that as well. But Google basically has 5 UTM tags that they suggest that you use. The first one is medium, source, campaign, so that would be your campaign name, content. So this is differentiating between any types of content that you have associated with that particular campaign. So if you've got multiple different content pieces, or if you're A/B testing. And then finally, you've got your terms. So this is used to identify any paid search terms that will eventually lead to clicks.
So only source and medium are required fields when you're using UTM parameters. But just coming back to your earlier point about naming conventions,
Yes.
so making sure that you've actually defined your naming convention up front and using that consistently across those UTM parameters really is essential, because if you're calling your campaign slightly different every time, or your medium something slightly different, that data is just going to be very sort of segmented. So if you're using a consistent naming convention, you really can aggregate that data all into one place and get a sort of holistic view of what's happening with your campaigns and all of your marketing efforts. So.
And then number 5 is connecting your Google Analytics with your Google Search Console. So this is absolutely vital in order for you to see what organic keywords are bringing your site traffic. So to see these results, you go to Acquisition, Search Console, and then Queries, and you'll be able to see everything from clicks, impressions, click-through rates, and your ranking for each term. If you don't have a Google Search Console account, we have again included a link in the description which will show you how to set one up.
So once you've gone through the sort of setup and you're happy that everything is configured correctly, it's time to start jumping into the actual metrics. And there are literally hundreds of metrics available for you to sort of look at and build reports on. And coming back to my earlier point around defining those business objectives, something that is extremely important in our opinion is building goals to track specific user action that's linked to those business objectives. So this really allows you to measure the sort of success or the ROI of your campaigns as it relates to the things that are important to your business. So the other metrics are important, but having those goals just makes it very sort of tangible in terms of your business's specific objectives. So to set up a goal, you're going to do it on a specific view, so the master view in this case, and then go into goals and click new goal. And this is where you can actually build out all of those goals that you're trying to track. There's 4 different kinds of goals that you can build. The first one is destination, which is essentially a specific page on your website that you want to track people, that when people have gone to that page on your website. The second one is duration, so measuring how long somebody's been on your website. So 2.5 minutes, for example, is a good indication that somebody has more intent on your website than somebody who's there for 20 seconds on your website. The third one is pages per view, so the number of pages that a specific session or user is viewing per session. And then the last one is events. So Google Analytics tracks a whole lot of metrics, but they allow you to track specific events that they don't cater for. So an event might be a form that's been completed successfully on your website. It might be a specific link that you have to allow people to download a piece of content. It might be watching a video for a certain length of time. If you want to set up event sort of goal tracking, you might need to get your IT team involved to deploy the tracking parameters linked to that specific event. Or if you're using Google Tag Manager, you can do it yourself. That's definitely the sort of easier way to do it. One of the things that you'll notice when you're setting up goals is a field called value. Now, value is essentially the dollar amount that this specific goal being completed is worth to your company. So with an e-commerce site, for example, a goal being completed if you buy a pair of shoes would be, $100 because it's linked to that specific purchase. With a real estate company, that's a little bit different, but it's definitely worth spending the time to understand and put in a dollar value for those goals being completed. This will differ depending on the goal that you're setting up, but just one example to give you an idea of how to do it. If you're tracking leads for a property page, so inquiries about a specific property, for example, ultimately you're tracking leads to your leasing team. So those leads have a specific value based on a conversion rate. Let's say for every 50 leads you get, you sign one lease, and you know what an average lease is worth to you. So the way that you will work out your dollar value for that goal is divide the sort of lease value by your average conversion rate, and that will give you a dollar value. So what this allows you to do is effectively measure the ROI of all of your campaigns and efforts as it results to that goal being completed. So if you're spending $10,000 on Google ads or a paid media campaign, and that's generating 50 leads, you know what those leads are worth to you in dollar terms to compare that to the amount of money you had to spend to generate those leads. So it's definitely worth taking the time to set up and understand the value and the dollar value behind those goals. So goals is a really powerful tool to understand behavior, to understand sort of ROI, and we definitely suggest taking the time, set it up correctly, understand, plan your approach. You can't delete goals, so make sure that when you start to create them, you have a well thought out plan. You can sort of deactivate them so they're not being tracked anymore, but you can't delete them. So yeah, just give a bit of planning before you start creating them.
So we've been using analytics for years, and it has over 200 different metrics that you can measure, which makes it an incredibly valuable platform, but it also makes it a very overwhelming platform. So in addition to sort of the specific metrics that you're going to measure in relation to your outlined business objectives, we've also outlined our sort of top 10 metrics that at a minimum you should be measuring every month. So the first one is sessions. So a session starts when someone enters your website page and then ends after 50 minutes of inactivity. So it's a bit of it is a less generous measurement than something like page views, which measures every time someone enters your page, but it gives you a little bit more of an accurate representation of how much time people are spending navigating across your page and performing specific actions. So the second one is sessions by channel. So this metric looks at essentially where your traffic is coming from. So it'll break it down by direct traffic, organic, paid, social media, email, etc. A point to note is that you want to make sure that the highest number of sessions is always coming from organic traffic, and you want to make sure that this is trending upward every month. Number 3 is your average session duration. So this tells you how long people are spending on your site, and you want to pay close attention to how this number fluctuates. So for example, REITs who have property listings on their websites, you want this number to be quite high because you want people to spend time searching through your different properties. If it's extremely low, for example, then it is cause for concern. Number 4 is users. So Google will let you track new and returning users. So it's an excellent way for determining whether or not your website is engaging enough to attract new users, but also compelling enough to get people to return and perform actions on your website again. So this is something to pay close attention to and kind of see how those numbers interact with one another. Number 5 is audience engagement. So this is a great metric for determining kind of how long people are spending on your site and what content they're engaging with, and what sort of pages are getting higher audience engagement. But it's also quite an interesting metric to determine whether or not your site is optimized properly. So if you're seeing a high level of audience engagement, for example, on a page that actually should be very easy to navigate, then you know that there's something missing on that page, or it's not optimized correctly and people are struggling to find the information that they need. Number 6 is bounce rate. So this is the percentage of users who enter onto your website and then exit immediately. So a high bounce rate normally means that you're lacking relevant content, or that your site is not properly optimized.
Just on the bounce rate, so something that could be a sort of problem with the bounce rate, if you're seeing a really high bounce rate, it could be that subdomain tracking issue. So if people are going onto a page and then clicking onto the sort of property details page that's on a subdomain, and you're losing that, it might count that as a sort of bounce, which is going to result in an extremely high bounce rate. So yeah, something to look out for there.
A sort of general rule of thumb is that you want to keep your bounce rate at around 60%. This is, I mean, it seems like a high number, but it's actually quite difficult to achieve a 60% bounce rate. So at a bare minimum, you want to make sure that every month your bounce rate is decreasing and trending towards something like a 60%. Number 7 is page views by page. So this helps you determine your most popular pages and your least performing pages. So for example, if you have properties listed by state, you'll be able to determine which states are performing the highest and which states are performing the lowest, and then obviously allocate your marketing budgets or efforts accordingly. Number 8 is mobile and device. So a lot of people underestimate how important it is to make sure that your website is optimized for mobile, for example. So many more people are using mobile to view websites nowadays. So this will allow you to look at where your users are viewing your website from, and will allow you to determine your sort of top performing devices and make sure that you can optimize for those top performing devices. Number 9 is goal completion. So this is kind of elaborating on Mark's point. This is the number of users who have successfully completed a goal on your website. And it will basically give you insight into how effective your website is at helping you achieve your business goals. And finally, number 10 is funnel visualization. So this is linked to your goal completions, and it's just a really excellent way of being able to visually represent the sort of buyer journey funnel on your website. So it will allow you to see, sort of give you a good indication of the different goals that are being completed at each stage in the buyer journey, and how your page views are changing as people progress down that channel.
Yeah, so there's a lot of different reports that you can sort of dig into and explore with the different metrics. Hopefully the insights that we've shared with you today have given you a sort of place to start and a sort of jumping off point. One set of reports that we did want to make you aware of, because we just find that they're very underutilized and are extremely powerful, is the multi-channel funnel reports. So essentially this group of reports allows you to track the sequence of events that have led to a specific goal being completed on your website. So I'll give you an example. If you're running an ad campaign on LinkedIn for your specific property, and somebody sees that ad on LinkedIn and then clicks through to your website and browses around for a bit and then leaves your website. A week later, they receive your email newsletter and they click on the link, they go to your website, they browse around a bit and they leave. And a couple of days later, they see a post on social media, they click on the link on social media, they go to your website, but this time instead of leaving, they complete a specific action. This multi-channel funnel reporting allows you to see that sequence and that build up to that conversion point, to allow you to better understand what is actually sort of assisting those conversions along the way. So very often we attribute 100% of that conversion to that last touch point. So we would say social media is responsible for this lead being generated, but actually those sort of events that led up to that point were just as valuable as that last touch point. So this is really powerful. I mean, if you take blogs, for example, this is something we often discuss with our clients and the sort of business users on their side, is justifying the value of creating content and blogs, because people see the blogs, we get a high number of visitors to our content pages, but it's not resulting in conversions. But if you look at that multi-channel funnel reporting, you can almost always see the contribution of those blog pages to the conversions as part of that that sort of channel, or those steps. So it's definitely something that you should check out. Just a warning, it can get quite technical, so you can start to build your own attribution models, which allows you to assign different weightings to the different sort of interactions along the way. So that's definitely something that you can explore a little bit further down the line. But at a minimum, go and check out, there's 2 specific reports. So top conversion pages report, and then the assisted conversion report is definitely 2 reports that you can sort of start off with. Yeah, I have included a link in the notes if you want to go and explore this topic a little bit further and do some reading on your own. It's quite fascinating. Yeah, so before we end for today, one last thing. We've definitely, visualizing data that comes out of analytics and building visual reports allows the data to be interpreted a lot easier and is a lot more powerful. So there's plenty of options available, but 2 that we just want to sort of recommend. So Google Data Studio is part of Google Analytics. It's their visual reporting platform. It's free, so it allows you to build really sort of good-looking visual reports off of your Data Studio or off your Google Analytics data. That's Google Data Studio. If you're looking for something a little bit more premium, this is our preferred reporting platform, a product called DataBox. And what we love about DataBox, and the reason that we use it for all of our clients and reporting for our clients, is it's out-of-the-box data integration. So what it allows you to do is pull data from Google Analytics and from your social media and from paid media and from your CRM system and a whole bunch of other data points into one environment and build a visual report with all of this data and really give you a beautiful sort of bird's eye view of everything that's happening in as it relates to your sort of marketing function. So yeah, definitely check out.
And it's automated.
And it's automated, yeah. So definitely check out those 2 platforms.
And that brings us to the end of episode 2. We hope that you found it helpful and valuable. As always, if you have any topics that you'd like us to talk about in the future, please leave it in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe and to click on the little bell so that you don't miss out on any notifications for our next episode. And
go make some Malva pudding.
Go make some Malva pudding. And if you do make it, please don't forget to send us photos. And I hope you enjoy it.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. See you for episode 3 soon. Bye.
Cool. Bye. It's good.